You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, the Cincinnati Reds have the number 9 pick in this year's draft, in the first round at least. Well, plenty of rounds after that as well. And I kind of wanted to break everything down before we get to Sunday. So to do that, I brought in our draft expert for Locked On, Jeff Ellis. He's also one half of Locked On Guardians. I know Jeff's going to be live for all of the draft, which I think includes something like 14 hours on Monday. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But you're going to want to check out his live stream. And we have the Locked On MLB draft night happening Sunday night, where we will recap day 1 of the MLB draft with the best picks, the riskier picks, and everything in between. But I wanted to take a focus for a minute on the Reds, because at number 9, I've read a lot of different mock drafts. I've read a lot of different draft profiles. I've read a lot of different opinions. I've seen a lot of big boards and all this other stuff. And everything is telling me, Jeff, that the Reds have a lot of different ways they can go about this. So I'm curious, from your perspective and understanding that obviously Ethan Holiday is not going to make it to number 9, but what is the best case scenario for the Reds at number 9?
Well, first, I think they're in a bit of a best case scenario, because the lack of talent, elite talent, I should say, in this draft means that the fact that they hit the lotto last year and didn't this year, it's a much better situation. They would be much worse if they had stayed where they were last year and not moved up this year. So I'll start with that, just some overall perspective. For me at that selection, I know fans won't like this, but I prefer a lot of the pitchers in this class. I really think that's the college pitcher group is the strength of the class. The players I feel confident will be off the board at that point in the draft are Cade Anderson and Ethan Holiday. Beyond those two, I feel like everyone kind of doesn't know anything. We're hearing so many different things. If you want to go hitter, Avia Arqueta is probably the guy I would look at. The other guys I like are more down the board to most. I think Andrew Fisher and Devin Taylor are really interesting. If they wanted to go with a prep talent, JoJo Parker or Eli Willits are the ones I would look at there. So you're looking more shortstop. And then, pitchers, if you don't care about risk, it's Seth Hernandez. I just think at some point we have to have that discussion with the prep player that every prep pitcher almost gets hurt. So you only getting 4 years instead of 6. And that's always my rationale why I'm lower on prep players is you're not going to get 6 years of team control. You're probably only going to end up with the equivalent of 4 in most situations. So I'm a big Jamie Arnold guy. I still have him number 1 because he's the only guy who has dominated at a top level 2 years in a row. Anderson was 1 year, Witherspoon was 1 year. A lot of those kind of upper arms didn't do it for multiple years. So I like him, but if you want a hitter, it's Arquette. I think at that point is the guy you would hope for just because of the power potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And 6'5", 220. I know that people are saying that he could stick at shortstop, but he could easily slot into third base if that's something that a team decides to go with as well. Let's stick with Jamie Arnold for just a minute, because I talked a little bit about him on a recent episode of Locked On Reds. And, the scouting report makes me think Nick Lodolo, low 3/4 arm slot. He's got a fastball, a slider, and he's got a changeup he needs to work on with command. That's where Nick Lodolo was whenever the Reds drafted him. He was a 3-pitch pitcher, but the changeup really wasn't a weapon for him yet. He's developed it into a weapon, but ultimately what I read about Jamie Arnold has me excited that if he were to be that pick, I think the Reds are making a good pick and a guy that probably could move through the system just as fast as Burns, Louder, and Matt McLain have here recently.
Yeah, I think I would go plus Lodolo just because I feel like his sweeper is a stronger pitch than Lodolo's secondary offering. So I think he's, it's a 60-65 grade pitch, I think, as it projects out. So you're looking at maybe some more swing and miss potential, more of an ability to get out guys. So I was a little bit lower on Dolo at the time, but that was also because of where he was pitching. And I want to say he was draft eligible sophomore. I could be wrong. That's just top of my head. I can't remember if that's true or not. But with Arnold, he's got that sweeper. It's a really strong secondary pitch. So I think he gives you that. But I do think he's pitched for 3 years at Florida State, and he's going to be a guy you should have move quickly.
Let's talk about that for just a little bit. The 3 years at Florida State thing, because I know you and I have had these conversations here recently as well. Like, there's a lot of players that have transferred a ton, and the way that NCAA transfer portals work in baseball are far different than they are in football and basketball. But still, that means that guys have moved around a lot, and there's a lot of different players playing at a lot of different schools. How do you value a guy like a Jamie Arnold who has stuck at one spot as opposed to a pitcher that may have pitched in 3 different schools in 3 different years?
Yeah, it's interesting talking to teams in the past because there's positives to both, honestly. Like if a guy has bounced around a bunch, then a team's like, well, no bad traits have likely set in, and there's maybe more growth potential because that player has not got a consistent coaching approach. In the case of Arnold, Florida State has been, it's a program. Like there's not a great program in general right now, outside of maybe Wake and to a lesser degree Tennessee, at developing pitching. Like we have seen the last 2 years, it's been kind of a wasteland of college pitching, and teams are looking for traits. They're not looking at necessarily performance. They're not looking at, velocity. They're looking for traits and things they think that they can fix and improve to make a guy level up, as it were. So when you're looking at someone like Jamie Arnold, I don't know, like if being at one place is as much the thing as it is that he has pitched at such a high level, and specifically the last 2 years. And I know certain teams that almost value the sophomore year data more than the junior year data. And Arnold was better in the sophomore year. And the reason they do that is because a guy in the sophomore year is younger, facing older competition. And I know you're saying it's only a year, but a year does matter. It's a year more of coaching. It's a year more of body development. And there are teams that will look at a dominant sophomore year and not care if a guy slips up as much as junior, because they're looking at, okay, this was actually kind of the harder year part of it. The Guardians have done this with a few guys. Hunter Gaddis comes to mind off the top of my head, but we've seen it with the Nationals at points as well, where they kind of sometimes will value, it feels like, the sophomore year more than the junior year. Toronto too. Those are the 3 teams that come to mind. So, when you're looking at a player who put up that level of performance when they were, not the most physically developed guy or not the oldest guy, that kind of stands out for orgs. It's just one of those things that it's not like a huge deal, but they're looking for every reason, right? You're looking for every minor detail, and that's something that can come up.
There's a guy that I've kind of circled in this draft, and Steve and I have both kind of gone on record and said that Locked On Reds is an Ike Irish podcast. And I know that you do have one concern about him that we haven't really touched on, because quite frankly, I don't have this type of information. I read the scouting reports that I see. But when you look at Ike Irish, what is the one thing that concerns you? Because take into account that I don't mind that on his profile it says, yeah, he caught, but honestly, he's probably going to move to outfield, maybe even immediately after the draft. Honestly, that's something that the Reds could really benefit from. The best way to get down to the ballpark is with Gametime. I use Gametime all the time, whether I'm in Cincinnati or I'm in another city following the Reds around to a new ballpark and trying to check one off my list. Gametime makes it easy. They've got great last-minute deals, so if you go down to your favorite spot, get comfortable, and you find a good deal close to first pitch, or if you're exploring, you can see exactly the view from your seat on their app. They're so very good with the information. They give you all of your pricing up front. You're not going to be surprised by fees, and they've got the last minute deals at the lowest prices guaranteed. That's the Gametime app. Download it today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. So go get yourself some low prices. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's on Gametime. Like I said, last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system, and it helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. If you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate, Open Phone can solve that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. There's no more, who's handling this? Open Phone is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Yeah, I have mid-year data, and in my mid-year data of potential draft eligible prospects, he had the worst launch angle in that list at 5.6. And your ideal launch angle, you want it over 15, and you're looking for it to be more of a if even better,
hitting more ground balls.
Yes.
And things
You're
like that.
you're hoping it's more in the 20 range. And the interesting thing is, I know I'm not supposed to look to the right. I was trying to pull up my data from 24 very quickly because I feel like his I feel like his launch angle. Yeah. So it's interesting because a year ago, his chase rate was higher and his launch angle was 11.8 and he had really good zone whiff data. This year, he was missing more in the zone. He wasn't chasing as much. So that could be a positive, because one of those other things I have a hard time judging, and it's like you're watching his passivity versus selectivity. If they're passive or are they patient? And I think he was a little more aggressive this year, which I think is a good thing. I think we're seeing too many passive hitters. But yeah, the launch angle is a concern. And then he doesn't have a great barrel rate, but I think that's partially because he doesn't have a great launch angle. So he's not, hitting the ball at a good way to make contact and get the most out of it. So that's my big concern. He's performed at every level. I thought I'd have him a lot higher when I sat down to write, because I liked him coming off the Cape. I liked him in what he did this year statistically. It's just that kind of under the hood data where I'm like, interesting. So it comes down to, I think with him, a team's got to work on the swing.
That's going to be something that I really, it's sort of off baseball. The reasoning that I love a Reds jersey that says Irish on the back. I'm not going to lie. I would be all over that. Maybe again, a sponsorship, who knows, but there's a lot of fun reasons to really like Ike Irish in that spot. That's kind of my question too, because you mentioned like college pitching is the strongest group in this draft, and looking at A.V. Arquette or Ike Irish at number 9 kind of feels like the college hitter spot. But when it comes to the Reds organization, I feel like I look top to bottom. I love our pitching. I love the depth that the organization has at pitching. And I kind of think that Derek Johnson has really focused everything in. And I feel as though the Reds have taken a big step forward in pitching development. Where I see the need is in the outfield, because it feels like the Reds have Hector Rodriguez, who might push for some playing time in the majors next season. But then past that point, there's not really anybody else in the outfield that makes me excited. The Reds have had so many of these quadruple A outfielders, these guys that you feel comfortable slotting them in as like the 4th outfielder on a major league team, but they're loading up their roster with those types of guys. So eventually you've got to get a 1, 2, or a 3 kind of guy. And I just haven't seen that sort of development from the Red system. So I guess what I'm asking is, whenever it comes to the strategy of drafting for need, which I know is not something that any successful drafting team does, how would you factor that into what the Reds could do, not even just day one, but both days?
Yeah, drafting for need it's a dirty word in the MLB draft. I will say, like, I do think there's weird occurrences where it makes sense. For instance, last year with Nick Kurtz, if you were a team that's already locked in at first base and DH, why would you take a fast-moving first baseman where it's a position that doesn't have as much value? Now, I love Nick Kurtz. Don't get me wrong. Was a fantastic prospect, but I think that's the one time where we really see it. When you look at this draft in general, I think there's some really interesting prep talent around too. If you can see who slides. I'm a big Taitn Gray guy. He's a lot of fun. 6'5", switch hitting outfielder / catcher who had some of the best exit velocities at the combine. If you want a raw kid, Ryan Mitchell really stood out when I sat down to look at prospects. Just a quick bat, a lot of fun. So there are, if they do go pitching, they can easily come back around and land a hitter. I'm trying to think, do they have a comp A or a comp B pick this year?
I think it's just a comp B. I don't think they have a comp A.
I know it's every other year. It bounces back and forth. I know what Cleveland's is. I don't know what anyone else's is, if I'm being honest, outside of the fact that I know that Baltimore's got one now because of the trade today. But, right. Going through, it's like, I do the prep hitter class is kind of weak at the top. It's a little bit mushy, I think. So you have all the shortstops, okay, and there's Ethan Holiday, there's all the shortstops, and then there's the next grouping. It's a lot of high risk. So then when you come back around, I think the second round actually provides some value with those guys that I mentioned, like Gray and Mitchell. Nick Becker is interesting. I keep trying to flip back and look at my list. Dax Kilby, hitter wise, like from the college ranks, that's when you can kind of get into debates. Like Mason Neville was. Let's be honest, he was hot garbage in the Cape. Like he was awful. And you're talking about a guy who tied for the NCAA lead in home runs and actually had like a good K rate, has a lot of nice data under the hood as well. So like what happened there? Now I talked about passivity versus patient. The profile does look passive, but it's like, here's a guy who looks like he could be an above average to average center fielder with plus power. Like you can deal with a guy who's going to hit like 210 if he's a 3 outcomes guy. If you get, I don't know if I want to even say, I don't like comparing anyone to Adam Dunn but he's just the king of the 3 outcomes.
Hey, like, you're gonna be on my good side. You compare a guy to Adam Dunn.
I love Adam Dunn. That's the other reason I don't like to compare anyone to Adam Dunn, because I don't think like I think he's not appreciated as much as he should be. Like that's just in my opinion. It's like, so if Adam Dunn was like the 70 grade outcome, like Neville's maybe a 50 grade outcome, because that's the other thing. It's like, I know Dunn didn't play center, but he was also a much better athlete than he ever got credit for as well, on top of the 3 outcomes type of performance. So, they say like a poor man's, I don't even think he's a poor man's. He's like a step lower than that, but like there is some of that there when you're looking at some of that potential. I love Devin Taylor. I'm in the top 10. I know I'm the only one who has him in the top 10, and that's fine. The reason that I differ so much from everyone else is the fact that I don't care that he can only play left field. Like I know that's a limiting thing and everyone wants up the middle talent. I'd rather have a guy who can only play left field than a guy who can only play first base. And Devin Taylor, he excelled on the Cape. He's been great at Indiana, cold weather bat. I wish he used his lower half a little more. Like watching him some more recently, it's like, it's all arms and quick swings, but like every stat component I have is positive on him. Like everything shows, above average. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, this is an interesting guy. I don't think, unfortunately for the Reds, he'll get back to them. But like,
because I did look it up. Their only 2 picks are 9 and 51. So I think I was incorrect. They don't even have a comp beat.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought for sure they'd have one. But yeah, they like Taylor's one of those guys. I was just said over here. Charles Davelin, I know the last moment for him was brutal in the college World Series, but it's like he might be an outfielder, he might be a second baseman. He was okay on the Cape. He's really small. Like that's part of the profile with him. I love the Lodosi cousins. Like Alex is all power. Like if you could make them one human, they'd be the top player in this class, because Alex is all the power and Kyle is all the like barrel rates, good swing decisions. So both of those are kind of fun players, with Alex just hitting rockets, some of the best exit velos in the class while being a true shortstop. And Kyle is a command the zone, excellent contact. And when he hits it, he barrels everything at second base.
Not too bad. I'm excited to see exactly how the Reds attack this draft, because kind of like you mentioned, at number 9, it feels like they are in a great spot to make a good first round pick, and then later on in the draft, kind of how some things fall. I mean, I'd cross my fingers a little bit that left field profile for Devin Taylor maybe has him fall to 51. That seems like a pipe dream, but he's a guy that we've had on Tyler Gibbons, current Red scout in the amateur side of things, that he's gotten the chance to scout Devin Taylor and he really likes him. So if he's there, I got
he's like a plus human too. So it's not just like, he's not a stellar athlete, but just all the batted ball data is great. And then you hear he's a great leader and he's a great teammate. And it's like, everything is, there's no concerns. Like he's got it, when the only negative is, well, he might only be a left fielder. It's like, that stands out.
Right. Exactly. But I'm looking forward to it. Jeff, I appreciate you so much for jumping on and previewing this draft. And like I said, you can catch MLB Draft Night Sunday night, recapping day 1 of the MLB Draft. That'll be on the Locked On MLB channel. Also, make sure you check out Jeff and Justin on Locked On Guardians, as they will be live during both days of the draft. A lot of draft coverage coming from Jeff Ellis here this year.